All right, today is March the 20th, 2021, and we're here with Sharyn Delgado. She's running for Place 4 City Council, City of Amarillo. Welcome, Sharyn.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start off with just telling the voters who you are and why you're running for City Council.
Well, I'm born and raised in Amarillo. I grew up in North Amarillo. I went into education, and have spent 25 years in education working with special needs children. I'm married for 35 years. I'm retiring soon from education this May. But what made me actually run for office is I was tired of the same conversations being at the top of the agenda. It seemed like for Amarillo, I was a little frustrated that it seems like we only focus on downtown. So actually, I'm just an average citizen who thought, okay, I have to stand up and do something. So that's what made me actually want to run.
Very good. So, what school do you teach at?
I am a behavior counselor, so I travel to schools, and so what I do is do behavior counseling with kids whose behavior gets in or interferes with their learning. So I have multiple campuses.
So you float around to different places.
Yes.
So you get a pretty good perception of what's going on throughout the whole school system.
I think educators every day walk in and they hear that children talk about the resources they have, if they have food, if they don't have food. I think educators hear about immigration. I think they hear stuff about poverty status, that I think they're great thermometers of our communities. So I think all educators are great to know what's going on in the community. They might not live in that community, but just hearing it every day and loving on those kids, they actually are hearing what the concerns are that rolls down to that child.
Well, there's nothing more important in our community than our children.
I agree with that statement.
So it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure we educate them properly.
Mm-hmm. Not just to educate them, but I think to think of their mental health and even how we invest as a community in our children and make sure that there's parks and recreation. I think that even investing in making sure that they're busy and they have activities to be involved in. We both know at our age, being very similar, that if children don't have things to be involved in, they're going to get involved in stuff we don't want them to be involved in. So I think even as the city, we have to invest in healthy activities for kids to be involved in.
The old adage, an
Yes.
idle mind is an evil mind.
And, I was raised by a Depression-age father who was 88 when he passed. So a lot of those old sentiments hang with me to give some kids something to do.
Excuse me.
You're good. To be able to keep their minds busy.
I've been sneezing all morning. I don't know. Must be allergies or something. But, well, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's a important thing that most people in the area probably don't really think about, that it's good that we have people that do that sort of thing and are doing the hard work that nobody really sees to ensure that our future and our children are taken care of. So how does that translate into wanting to be on the city council?
I think it is hearing people. I think my mental health background and being a counselor, the conversation always should be with city council, hearing our people. And one of the biggest things that I hear right now is even this morning at the event you and I were at, people want to be heard. I understand that there's only 4 city council members, but it's our job to get out and go listen to people and diverse people in all areas of town. I think being able to see our differences and the struggles that one person even has or a group of people, it affects all of us. It affects us as a community. Take like like kids being idle and getting into wrong things or addiction. Well, I think it is our community services that need to make sure we don't have gaps in services, or we have activities for children to be involved in and stuff. So I think that background of education and mental health, I think I'd be an asset on the city council.
Well, there's probably a lot of voters that think somebody with some mental health skills might be a great asset on the city council.
Well, I think so too. I think that even looking with the adults, that it's a great thing to look at.
Maybe they were some of those that you were talking about that got missed in the system.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I'm just joking there. But it's kind of interesting. But the mental health issue is a big issue, and I think that even a lot of things that affect the city, like the homeless situation, for instance, primarily is driven by the mental health problems. And the suicide rate is just, even in children now, it seems to be going up astronomical. Mm-hmm. And all of that's related to mental health. So.
I absolutely agree with you. In fact, I think all those issues were huge, even more than a year ago, because we're at an interesting spot. It's a year ago that we went in to pandemic mode, that we shut down. Even before that, I served on the Texas Panhandle Suicide Coalition for several years, and that covers the top panhandle to try and prevent suicides. And what I do know is one suicide is one too many. And you and I know that if that's your child, it's devastating. So absolutely, mental health has always been an issue, especially with the homeless, that's where we get major mental illness, that it's people who are not on medication or have services or don't go to the doctors on a regular basis. But then once this pandemic started and we isolated people, even people who were functional with their mental health, now they haven't had that support, or they haven't even had, in some places, in-person counseling sessions, that it's disconnected through a computer. So I think, especially in this year, and one of the reasons that I thought this was the time to run, in the middle of this pandemic, of course, those mental health issues are increased. Even your friends or my friends or anybody listening, their friends who maybe had a little anxiety and depression, now this fear with the pandemic has caused people to have a heightened of whatever their diagnosis is. So I think that not only does it impact our education system, it impacts our law enforcement. I think it impacts employees, because I think you can track, does that employee show up on time? Is that employee, their attendance? How about their overall work performance? I think it impacts so much of Amarillo that we don't see how it impacts the business of Amarillo.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So what is it that causes mental illness? Is it a chemical imbalance? Is it is it genetic? I mean, what is it, environmental factors? What do you see as really the root cause? Or is there any?
I think it's a whole combination. I think if we had that answer, that would be the $1 million answer. I think mental health oftentimes is genetic. That's why I think great mental health services and us having mental health services is extremely important, and keeping providers locally and having facilities. So I think it's genetic. Of course, I think it's a chemical imbalance on lots of places. I think there's things such as depression that, in studying suicide, let me take depression. It's not something we can just say, well, suck it up and, man up and get over that depression. That's not how it works. It's a brain chemistry often that requires medication or a combination medication and therapy to go along with it. Panhandle Behavior Alliance is a nonprofit here in Amarillo, and they're doing really amazing work to look at the gaps. What they're doing is working with the City of Amarillo's Public Health Department, and they went back to 2018's Amarillo Health Assessment. And the top 3 things listed in that assessment of Amarillo as the biggest concerns was mental health, addiction, and obesity. So they talked about how mental health and addiction, the impact on it. And even like you said with our homelessness, there's a lot of people that are homeless that suffer from major mental health issues.
Well, I think that's getting a lot of attention now because I think our legislature is picking the issue up, and that's one of the main priorities in our legislature this session is mental health issues. And I think For Price, our 87 representative, is heading that up. So Amarillo's kind of becoming at the forefront of that issue as a leader.
I think we
in that
have
area.
to, because truthfully, I think it impacts all of us. I think in the days of when addiction wasn't in every family, people would think it was those people or them. But the truth is, it impacts every single one of us. Every one of us has somebody in our family that has struggled with addiction. It doesn't matter if it's a gambling addiction, drugs or alcohol, whatever that topic might be, that every single one of us knows one person who's struggling with addiction. And for those families, it's helplessness. Like, where do you turn? And I know, like I said, Panhandle Behavior Alliance is trying to fill those gaps. Like, how do we keep providers here? How do we even recruit them to the Amarillo area and make sure that they financially are able to sustain and stay here? We need that. We have to have that as large as our community is.
Well, very good. So what are some of the main issues you see that needs to be tackled by the current city council?
I think every single person I've talked to has said that they want Amarillo to be looked at as a whole. That when I talk to people from like the Trade Winds area, they're different than even like the 3rd Street or the Barrio or even Sunrise, that even in that one little community, that they want to be heard, that they want economic growth in their area. They want to have shopping centers. They want the city of Amarillo, the council, and the mayor to focus on each area. One of the biggest things that I've been told is by people, well, they have these community neighborhood groups. Well, when I talk to the different neighborhood groups, they're like, yeah, and we've made these really great suggestions. For example, like lighting of Alamo Park. Well, yes, a lot of people use that park. They would like to have good lighting to help to cut back crime or for the local hotel people to come down and walk. So I think that's one step to have these great community advisement or groups, but we need to have follow through on some of their recommendations too. So I think that's one issue is Amarillo being seen for each of the community and looking at the whole and the streets in each neighborhood and the investment in each neighborhood. I want a civic center too, somewhere down the road, but I don't want us to be in a rush and build something during the middle of a pandemic when, first of all, we should be focused on our small businesses. We should be focused on our food banks full. Are we taking care of our people? Down the road, absolutely. I'd love to have a new civic center, but I think 2021 is maybe not the year for that. I think that man, in Emerald, Texas, we're a bunch of animal lovers. Bunch of crazy animal lovers. I'm a crazy animal lover. But I don't think that it's everybody's job to fund that either. I don't think it's the city of Amarillo let me go back. I think we have to be smart in how we fund it. My mental health background tells me throwing money at something never solves the issue.
Right.
That you have to really look at your processes and your system to make sure that money is spent well. So those are some of the topics.
Now, are you talking about the animal shelter?
Yeah. Well, not just the animal shelter. I think this is very interesting that I started with the Amarillo shelter, but then I didn't realize that if there has been money pulled from the zoo to invest in it, those two things are not a comparison. They have to be standalones. That in a small community like ours, that zoo represents top 26 counties as their zoo. That we have to invest in it and make adequate for the animals, that they have their yearly checkups, that we're spending money on them too, to keep it. I don't think it needs to be the Oklahoma City Zoo. I think it needs to be just like Amarillo, Texas, but it's not I'll take from the zoo to give to the Humane Society. I think that they both need to be looked at and evaluated for change.
I would think that you would be able to work with some real nonprofit groups with the zoo and the animal shelter, and they would probably relish the opportunity, and then they could go out and raise funds to support those things in a way that the city just doesn't have the capacity.
I absolutely agree. I don't know if you're on any of the Amarillo animal pages. I am, and I cannot even tell you that average people like you and I are just amazing about providing. Somebody needs a vet bill, and I just watch PayPal. People are willing to do. So I think that if we could look into other facilities around the country, because I think this is my educator background, is you go find a model that first of all is financially responsible, and you look at how they structured theirs. I'm a great believer in let's go, not recreate the wheel, but let's go and look at that and see what it would cost. But I'm always going to go back, and like I said, I think it's my depression age dad that makes me super financial conservative or tight on money, whatever you want to call it. But I think then we look at how we do that at a reasonable cost. And I think the key is the partnerships and nonprofits in our community, grants, anything that we can to set it up right.
Well, I think in Amarillo, when I listen to the voters, I try to listen to what they want. And they want the city to do the important things that they're mandated to do. Do the needs, the infrastructure, the streets, the city, the water, the sewer. They're not interested in the city doing the wants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody wants a new civic center so they can have some big act come to town, but I don't think the voters care.
Mm-hmm.
It's not important to them. I mean, you could have a field and a flatbed truck and have any concerts you want, right? You don't need a fancy civic center.
Right.
They don't want to have to support it. I don't think it's right to make the taxpayers pay for something that a few are going to use. And it's kind of like the zoo and the animal shelter. I think those things, I think the voters understand those are important community assets, but maybe the city shouldn't be the one handling it. That's more of a want. We need dependable power, dependable water. We want our sewer plants running properly and our streets maintained. And I think that the voters believe that if those things are taken care of, and they want good schools, then the rest will come because businesses will flock to Amarillo because we're taking care of the important things, and the rest of it will, it's like Adam Smith said, the invisible hand will make it happen.
It's interesting. As I'm speaking to people, it's about 50-50. I have, and used to in the past when I'd ask people their opinion, the older group of people did not want to raise taxes and stuff. And I think it's been interesting since I've started asking so many people just their questions about exactly what you said, like who pays for it. I've had a lot of older people say they don't mind investing in Amarillo, such as they don't want to invest in a civic center that's smaller than what we currently need or have. They don't want something that's just about the looks or that about seating capacity. So I'm interested in, there's a lot of people who want us to be able to have a facility one day that can hold us. However that is funded, I think it has to be more of a reasonable approach. And I think even input has to happen way before we make decisions or even hire architects, that there has to be all this input from the citizens going, at our age, do we want to invest in that? There should be a poll group on that. How about the younger kids? Do they want that? Take the the Humane Society. Man, this is a big topic here in Amarillo. I've had lots of people bring this up, that I'm with you in the sense that our first thing always has to be the basic level. We have to take care of our streets. We have to take care of our water. We have to take care of the presentation of our city. Otherwise, people aren't going to want to invest in here. So I think there's our foundation. But then when we choose to invest, it has to be in a quality of life kind of situation. I want, as a grandma, to be able to take my grandson to things that make me proud in Amarillo, nice parks that are taken care of. And another little topic that has always been a sore spot to me is Gene Howe Park next to Martin Road. You took a great park and you ruined it. Now it's been there since 2013 as a safety hazard. Well, those little people over there want that taken care of too. So I do agree with you in the sense that, yes, we have to take care of the streets, the water, and our basic foundation. And I think we have to be smart not to increase taxes when there's a lot of fat put into that. That's just fluff in bond issues, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, so they started getting downtown businesses back going and wanted to encourage people to put their business downtown. And then they went and slapped them with parking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what's your opinion on that?
Oh, I have a lot of opinions on that downtown stuff. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I think they've done a great job. I voted against the sod poodles. I'll tell you that because my husband and I are old enough. We like to go to concerts at other places. When we go to Albuquerque at an amphitheater, we lose money. If that weather changes that day, we lose money on that concert, the hotel, and everything. So that being passed, we are both people that if something happens, then we embraced it. So we're season ticket holders at the Sod Poodles. We plan to support that because it is here in Amarillo. But when you think about all the shops that are right around there, I think it's difficult to lease around there. I think it's difficult for small businesses. I think when I see all those vacant places down there, I don't want it to be just for the big people here in town. I'd love some small business owners to have reasonable opportunities to use those spaces down there.
So have they ever had a concert at the Sod Poodle Stadium?
Well, I got some tickets. I got some tickets coming up, but all of a sudden there's this, I think there's 2 sets of concerts that are coming up. I kind of smile about that issue too because that's what it was sold as. In fact, on election night, that's where I'm going to be, regardless if I win or lose. I'm going to be at a concert, the Sod Poodle, supporting it because it is here in our community. I think we have to be very mindful. The parking garages and it's a lot of money we put into those parking garages.
Well, I guess I think a lot of the voters, I mean, I've heard it. I've had the experience of going downtown and getting a parking ticket because I'm not going to download some app and I'm just not going to do it. And I've talked to the business owners down there and they said, yeah, as soon as they slapped the parking deal, people quit coming. Mm-hmm. Psychological. It's just not fair, in my opinion, to those businesses on Polk Street or any of those other streets where they have parking to penalize their customers when you can be at a strip center off Soncy and you don't have to pay for parking and drive right up, park, walk in, and do your business. Whereas downtown, they're penalizing you for using a business downtown. I just think that's not good business. So look at the tax revenue, sales tax revenue that they're taking away that might otherwise have been generated for a small amount that they might. I haven't seen the numbers. I'd like to look at them, but I would think that it's costing them as much or more than what they're bringing in.
Isn't that a great question?
So who's making the money on that?
Isn't that a great question? I would like to know that too. And I would like input from small businesses downtown to see how they do it. I think it's one thing to be a corporate that you're losing somebody else's money, but you and I know small business people, you're losing your own dollar, you're losing your investment. I would love to visit with the people that are small business owners on Polk Street or even any of those downtown streets to see how they feel. Not the big ones that it's just corporation money. Not that that's not a hurt somewhere, but it's different when your skin's in the game and it's your money, your savings going on to that.
Yeah, it's different when it's you're a voter and it's your business.
Yes, it is.
Corporations can't vote.
Yes.
That's kind of the big difference there.
Well, and the loss of the dollar is not so much personal if it's not your savings or your investment and stuff. So I do think even when we get into communication, we've got to figure it out. I know that we have a small portion of our community that is from other countries, and a lot of those have been persecuted for speaking out or having a voice. The Asian community, or I think about our Somalian community. I think we have to figure out a way to engage some of those people in our processes. Amarillo as a whole, we have to look at everybody that's here and try and get people re-engaged in our community.
Well, I think people are starting to wake up and realize, national stuff they don't have any effect on it really, although it's extremely important to vote. Mm-hmm. State stuff is a little bit removed, but at least our local state representatives are available to the voters. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can pick up the phone and talk to any of them, which is good.
Yeah, I agree.
But the most important elections, the most important people are at your local city and county, because the policies that they put forth impact your lives every day, even down to your precinct level. Elections are down at the precinct level, or I want to get those back to that. They went to voting centers, which I'm 100% against, because it's about community. And people like you running for city council, to me, you all are the most important elected officials in the nation. And then our county commissioners and our county office holders. Mm-hmm. People need to know who they are.
Right.
And people need to talk to them, engage them. But I think they've been so numbed by the media, who reports nothing but national stories, because there's no local reporters anymore. The local papers, they blame it on the internet. But I said, it's not the internet. It's because you all quit reporting on local stories. Right. You got lazy. You went to aggregators and you just repeated the same thing that you can hear on any national news outlet. So you pick up the Globe News, it's the same stories. Mm-hmm. There's very few truly local stories about people in your community. Because they didn't want to pay the reporters, right?
Right.
So to me, it's not the internet's fault. It's the media's fault for not focusing on the local. But I think that people are starting to wake up and realize it's their county in which they live that's the most important. So hopefully we can gradually change that. So that's what we're trying to do, is get this out to the voters so they can get to see who you are, so they can make a good decision.
Because I'm excited, even today, looking at the group of people that were at the meet and greet that we were at. It gives people a chance. I think it's very hard to run against PAC-funded people. I think of Amarillo as small town because it feels small town, that we're people who take care of our people. But when big business comes in and backs candidates, it's hard to run. I mean, I'm proud to write my own personal checks for a lot of it to support my own beliefs, and if I believe in something, to stand up. I'm excited today on all the candidates that were in the room.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Yes, it was amazing. And, and I love that it's not a negative. I told Howard Smith, who I'm running against, I'm very impressed with him. I'm impressed with his history and his job resume. And the most important thing I'm impressed with Howard Smith with, 50 years. April 15th is his anniversary. 51 years it'll be of being his wedding anniversary. I think that it's okay. We don't have to be against each other.
Right.
I can choose to want different. And I really think that Cole Stanley said it well today, regardless if you win or not, you're obligated to help other people to get their voices heard. Mm-hmm. I feel the same, regardless if I win or not. All the people I've talked to so far, I've got to share their voice. I've got to then become an advocate, because each person I've met, really my question is to everybody that I meet, what are you doing for the city of Amarillo? What are you doing to make Amarillo better? Because I think regardless what community you live in, go back to what you said about the county, make your block better. Mm-hmm. Work on your one block. Yep. What can you do with the 8 neighbors that are on your square block? Or if you're a bigger block like me, what about the 24 people on my block? I first have to answer that question. And the second one is, who am I helping up? I come from North Amarillo, raised 4 blocks off the boulevard. I have an obligation to my street to help people still continue to get to the next level. Mm-hmm. That's my obligation.
Yeah, how much income you have has nothing to do with how you live.
Absolutely.
It starts with them individually. They need to take care of themselves, and they need to take care of their property.
Right.
Paint your house.
Right.
Clean up your trash. Show some pride in what you have. It doesn't matter the value of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, somebody in a $20,000 house is every bit as important as somebody in $1 million house.
I absolutely, and their voice has to be equal.
Because the people in the $20,000 house are going to move up. Mm. The $1 million house guy is going to die tomorrow. Yeah. Or soon. That's just, it's progression. So we want everybody to get ahead, but it starts with taking care of themselves, their property, whether they rent it or own it. And then that comes back to government. When we see government instituting policies that don't encourage that or discourage that. So now if somebody goes and cleans up their property, the appraisal district jacks up their value.
Right.
Increases their taxes. Mm-hmm. And it's just, they do some irrational things.
Right.
Or you have a property owner that's trying to improve his property, hassled by the code enforcement because of the R factor on a window he put in, that had single pane windows before. I ran into this on a property, and they said, so I just let the house sit for years. I just tell them go pound sand. I'm not going to do it,
I do think hearing that today, even, we're pushing people out of the city limits. Yeah. This is us. This is our policies here in town. Or pushing people out to Strawberry Hills or out past St. Francis because of the regulations. That was a great example today, that if in Clarendon it cost you $500,000 to build a property, and then here it cost you $600,000.
That's 20% more.
I agree. But I think we have to point out.
I've heard that before. That's not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
And I experience it. So.
Hey, I think the example given today by the elderly couple from San Jacinto, I go through San Jacinto quite often and down Emerald Boulevard to go to my dad's house. I think there's lots of things that elderly people do not and cannot do, such as like the tree trimming. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's grants that we need or ways to help them out, but that was an elderly couple living in San Jacinto. We heard that they did everything right. They put their tree limbs that had fallen down from a storm, and then they had to call over and over and over and over. I know my husband has called several times on our little business across the street, the trash, about being picked up. There has to be some kind of process that makes it easier for people to take pride in their home and when they're working, those people had to be at least 60 or plus. They've done everything that the city has told them to do. And they were extremely frustrated that they weren't getting a response and they couldn't keep their house tidy like they wanted to because the trash couldn't get picked up.
Well, I've often known, I mentioned it to the previous city manager and the mayor, and I think they thought I was probably should be put at the pavilion. But I said, why are you charging people to take trash to the dump?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you pay people to bring their trash to the dump? Pay them $10 a ton.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have the cleanest city, and it would save you a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
But they just don't think that way. I mean, try it for a month.
Yeah.
Try a month. Say, anybody that brings trash, and you'll have every private business guy or entrepreneur with a pickup and a trailer cleaning this town up, and it would be spotless.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. You know, when I'm driving through there, like I told you, my dad recently passed, but he lives over off North Spring, and they had went to the garbage containers. And one of the things, him as he struggled this last year with cancer, it was hard to watch. He couldn't haul that big trash can out to it. I'm grateful for the neighbors on North Spring that were kind to my dad and would actually haul it out there or back, or if his trash blew away, he wasn't capable of going and doing that. I think even in that neighborhood, watching, we lived in the same house all 54 years, or, you know, as a child in that house on North Spring. I think even if there was like a big dumpster, like one of the really big
roll off,
yes, put in the neighborhoods,
sure.
I think people do want to have pride. I don't think Hamlet wants to have like people leaving like the piles that are there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think East Amarillo does, or I've seen a lot on the neighborhood pages recently about like right off of Olson. Nobody wants all that trash in their neighborhood.
And they don't want to pile it in their front yard.
No.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. Who came up with that brilliant concept? I'm not sure. But, you know, I just think that there's other ways that they could do to make that happen. I understand a lot of people don't have pickups and they're elderly and maybe they can't haul off their own trash. But I think you could privatize that in such a way. All you'd have to do is say, we'll pay you $10 a ton, and you could have an internet page where there was people that had trash, and I guarantee you people would be looking at that and they'd be racing over and see who could get there first to pick it up.
I agree too. I've never thought about that.
And you wouldn't have to do anything. That's just off the top of my head.
But I think that's what we have to do is get groups of people to sit down.
Try it in one neighborhood. See what happens.
And brainstorm and come up with some solutions.
If it doesn't work, try something new.
I agree.
But I just think piling it up, paying city employees and city equipment to go out and to haul it off doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have my building down just to the west of downtown here. We had a guy that we just hired in my heating and air company, and the guy told him before he gets back, just trim up these trees in the back. You know, we do all our own tree trimming and everything, but this was like giving him something to do before we actually got him going. So he did. He stacked it up there, and he told him, we'll just call the city. They'll come pick it up, right? Well, the receptionist calls the city. It was gonna cost $220 plus $27 application fee. I mean, it was going to be ridiculous to haul one little trailer load of limbs off. I just called my maintenance guys, had them swing by and pick it up, and took it to my own brush site that I started because the city shut them down.
Right.
So I let all the contractors come. I just started it because there was a need. I didn't even charge them in the beginning because nobody had a place to put trash or brush.
Right. I agree.
And they were dumping it on all the bar ditches because they wouldn't let them in. They would have to pay so much to take it to the dump, they wouldn't do it, and driveway out there. So then now it's kind of turned into a big deal, and we handle a lot of brush. But
I do wonder, and I know there was a lot of dumping at it, but I know my husband and I, because we're extremely frugal, that even with our building, we do the majority of our own cutting, unless it's something that like I think I can't do. But we use that, the brush, little chipping place across from Ross Rogers quite often, that we would haul stuff there. And to me, I felt like when you can recycle something, here it is brush, and when they would leave the chippings there, that's great mulch for other people who can't afford to go to Home Depot and pick up their own mulch. I think that it was a great way to recycle stuff that other people could utilize what was available there too.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do. But I mean, I have a better understanding of what it costs to do that. Just the equipment is,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you're talking multiple millions of dollars worth of equipment, and they have employees and benefits. I mean, that's costing a city a fortune to do that. That could be done privately for a fraction of the cost and save the city a ton of money. But they're not interested in saving money. I mean, I don't see that attitude.
Yeah. I had a question where somebody asked me about like the city budget and asked me on the chat. They said, well, you're a small business owner that, you know, you're not used to working with budgets. Well, I don't think anybody in Amarillo is used to working with a $400 million budget. Do you know what I'm saying? My asset or my background doesn't mean I have to be the same as every person on the board as a business, like an investor or that. But I do know myself and know how frugal I am. I can look at line items all day long and question stuff. So I felt like my asset on like the city council doesn't have to be the same background as you. Like I think on the city council, we should have very diverse people. And my asset might be able to take my frugal background and really going, well, is this really correct why we're spending this much on that? But it doesn't mean that my background has to have been where I'm looking at $1 million budgets. No, we don't all need to be the same on that board. My strength should hopefully compensate for somebody's weakness on the board. And that's what I think a good board would look like, not all the same.
Well, I think sometimes people use the word budget more as a weapon and not as a tool. You know, I understand governments have to, they should say, this is how much money we bring in. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
And from there, we prioritize.
Yes.
What's important. And then cut out the stuff that's not. I mean, it's not rocket science.
Right.
But I think a lot of times they say, well, it's not in the budget or something. Well, that's just a cop-out.
And if it's not in the budget, sorry to interrupt you, if it's not in the budget, create the community partnerships. I think there is so much money in Amarillo, Texas. There's so much money. Why aren't we going to people and going, put your name on those bus stops?
Exactly.
Put your name.
We used to.
Churches.
I used to advertise on them.
Yeah.
I used to advertise on the bus stops when, what's his name? He was on the city council, Randy Burkett.
Oh, yeah.
He had that contract, and I actually advertised my rental properties back in the late 90s.
Why aren't we going to businesses or churches or nonprofits to go, hey, be our partner, work with us? You're watching people.
All kinds of, we deal with pretty much all the big tree trimming outfits come to my brush site. You know, I guarantee you, if they could run around and pick up people's trash out of their yard or tree limbs with their name on the side of their truck, it's advertising, right?
Yeah.
I think they would be happy to do it.
Yeah. I don't know what keeps us in this model of what we're in, doing the same thing that we've always done, instead of like being able to go to the community places and not asking for handouts, but hey, let's all do the Amarillo together. Let's partnership with each other. This is all of us. I think the problem
is they hire people that are highly educated, okay, and they come from different cities, and they don't have they've never done the work, okay. There's a difference. I always tell people I am so fortunate that I'm not overeducated. I think it dumbs them down. They actually believe that their degree is important and that they're smart. And once people get that mindset, they can't seem to use good judgment.
I think, and the only thing I disagree about you, I'm such a believer in education, trades. It doesn't matter if mentorships, whatever, I think we're caused to grow and we should value that. I think where there becomes ignorance is where you believe that you know it all or know what's best for people.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is we've gotten to the point to where, and maybe it's come from everybody using computers.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not on the checklist, or if it's not in the manual, or they don't think beyond that.
I absolutely agree. In fact, one of my biggest fears is getting in trouble for being such a simple thinker. Why don't we reach out? Why don't we ask people to come help? Why not on these bus stops? Why don't we get sponsorships for that? Why don't we? I think when there's a need that we need to do, then we should all roll up our sleeves and go do it. I think the steps and the complications that we make prevent us from rolling up our sleeve and going doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
Yeah.
The people, the voters will have the ideas.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, all you got to do is ask your constituents and say, what's your idea on how to do this? And some of them might be crazy, like if you ask me, but then there's somebody down the street that's going to have an idea that makes absolute sense.
And on this line, I don't think just because the people that have backed the same council that we've had and the same people, I don't think just because you have money that you have the answer to everything. I don't think it excludes you from having the answer. But back to your analogy of the person who has the $20,000 house, they pay their taxes too.
Yeah.
Their opinion is valuable just as equally as you and I. You know, my mother worked in the cafeteria at Paladera High School from 76 to maybe 82. A proud woman in our community that fed lots of people, not for the recognition, not for anything, didn't care what color that child was. That's what we do. We feed people. If your neighbors are hungry, guess what? You feed them. Mm-hmm. My dad being a Depression-age person in Minnesota, if people knocked on the door, they helped out on the farm and they got fed. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. And I think the thing I love so much about Amarillo, my husband and I travel all over. We love Amarillo. We are in a bubble in Amarillo, Texas, that we have more than 30-something languages in our community. We run on a West Texas or a philosophy of a cowboy's way of taking care of our own. That's why we have all these shelters. This is why we have food banks. This is why we have people taking care of our animals. I think the people of Amarillo are really good. They know what's right and they know how to take care of people. We should be listening to them. Yep. I don't think it's left for a few select people that have the dollars to promote their campaign people. No, I think there's some good people.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic behind that, unless they have an agenda.
Yeah.
So but I don't understand why. Okay, they're supporting those, but have they talked to any of the other candidates? How do they know?
Yeah.
Who to support? Because they don't know all the candidates.
It's so interesting that, I get no PAC money, so just know that. And some of it's a little choice, too, that I don't want anybody to feel like there's any ownership in me. Anybody who knows me will tell you I'm very straightforward. I don't believe in secrecy, or I don't think that's healthy. It kind of creates an infection almost in, like, ulterior motives. But when I look at some of the list of the people that serve on some of those, I remember when they were small business owners and being a mom with 4 kids, and I intentionally chose to go to their restaurants or go to their places and spend my dollar there. I believed in them back then. And now, because you get so much money that you're all about, you think what's best for Amarillo.
Yep.
Well, I was intentional, and I still am today. ABC Signs did my signs, and Clay will tell you that, man, I had to scrape up money, sit there and go, okay, I believe in buying locally, even when it's super expensive, and I have to. This is what I believe in. So I think that with some of those people. I think they've kind of lost or maybe drank their own Kool-Aid to think that they know what's best for all of us. No, I think average working people in Amarillo are hardworking people that have good insight. And I think you said it best. They have the answer for our problem. I know that I don't. I'm just an average person in December that I felt like God said, hey, now's the time. I thought he was crazy because I was like, I got a sick dad. This is not the right time. But the more I talk to people, people want to be heard. Average people want to be heard. They want change.
Well, what those people with the PACs need to understand is that guy with the $20,000 house, his vote is equal to the guy in the $1 million house.
I agree.
Everybody is equal when it comes to their vote. And what I'm trying to do is make people aware of that and understand that they can change the world if they'll show up. And if you show up locally, you can have just a tremendous impact. So that's what I'm trying to get people to understand, to be involved, show up, vote. And what we're trying to do is let everybody see all the candidates so they can make a decision and we get the money out of this. You don't need a lot of money to run. You shouldn't need a lot of money. And the only way I figured out how we can do that is do things like this for all the candidates, get it out at no cost to anybody. We play no favorites and let the voters decide. So theoretically, no candidate would need any money.
Right.
If it's done properly.
Right.
And, I even think at the national level, I think the candidates, our representatives, whether it's state and national, they ought to be paid by the parties. Mm-hmm. Whether they're a Democrat, the Democrat Party ought to pay them. Then they're beholden to their voters, not the state and not the federal government. The local party should raise the monies, and they should pay those candidates.
I think here in Amarillo, I'm blown away how much people do raise in the middle of a pandemic when our food banks are struggling with Catholic charities saying that they're, that they've had a shortage. That to me, my whole goal, and this is actually how I'll do business because this is how I am. Just because you offer doesn't mean I need to accept it. That I need to run a very frugal campaign and to be very mindful of every penny, every dime that's spent. So I think that that's that piece of that. And going back to the ownership, tell you the truth, as my husband and I was delivering signs, all these signs around town, it made me proud that I have signs in every neighborhood. It made me just as happy for my friends in Hamlet that I grew up with to have signs over there, out on Hastings, out on the Loop, or even anywhere in Amarillo, the Yorks out in Sunrise. Those are people who know me, that they've watched me a lifetime. There's a lot of people here in Amarillo who do not know me, but if they reached out to one person who knows me and says, describe Sharyn to me. Well, first of all, I'm super honest. That's not always everybody's, and I'm straightforward. I'm going to tell you just what I think. It may be super simple, but that's me, and I'm going to be dependable.
Well, those are very good qualities. I think the voters are all gonna want in a candidate. So what else? What other issues do you think need to be a focus of the new administration at the council?
I do think we go back to let's go back to mental health and homelessness. As I said, I'm not the expert in the field. My education background makes me go to those who actually are on the ground and working in those fields. So I was truly blessed. I think Junie Wagner over at Guy and Sanders, absolutely amazing. I think the executive director there, Tracy Sumners, I think she's amazing. But when you start picking people's brains about what do you see the strengths and weaknesses? And that's my educator mental health. Tell me the good and the bad. That way we'll know what we can build on our pluses as a community. But if we have negatives or weaknesses, let's figure this one out collectively as a group. When they talked about the homelessness and affordable housing, man, the only way I know how to explain it is my husband and I have attended church in North Heights for 35 years. He's actually attended since the 60s, the same church his parents went to. So I've been a guest in that neighborhood for 35 years, driving through there. I think they've done a great job to tear down vacant houses that had criminal activity. But what's left is vacant lots. So I know that we need affordable housing in all areas, and however we figure that piece out. So I think affordable housing has to be partnerships with building, or I think Jason Riddlesberg with the City of Amarillo's community development. I think he has some really good plans for major mental illness, that if some of the homeless are in living communities, that there is case managers and stuff, we'd have less homelessness, because then they'd actually have a facility to have on-site case management and people to make sure their mental health is good. And even in the partnership with the police department, I support our police department. I want to make sure they're fully funded. They work a lot with the homelessness. I want to make sure that coordination in services between the homeless centers and the police department is able to go, okay, here's this person, here's some of their issues. Maybe they don't need a female police officer. It just de-escalates the situation and makes it us working together instead of a bunch of agencies with lots of gaps in services. So take the police department. Sorry, let me skip. The police department, I had a police officer who talked about like the comparison with Lubbock's police department and the budget. I think there's some things that need to be transparent, that we as a community go, okay, here's what our police department has, here's their needs. Is there waste in spending? If there's not, do we need to invest in accountable spending on that?
Well, that's good. Think outside the box a little bit and figure out how to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. Like the homeless thing, I mean, if we could figure out, from my perspective, you don't worry about the problem. Try to figure out what causes the problem, fix that, and the problem disappears. Government tends to want to solve the problem, or most of them don't want to solve it. They want the problem,
right? Because
that's how they get reelected. Mm-hmm. They don't want to solve it. Almost all problems are easily solvable. It's just nobody has the courage to solve them.
Wouldn't it be nice if we solved it, or even had reduced it greatly, that if we take homelessness and we look at affordable housing and some of the money that hopefully is going to roll in on the continuum of care services for housing and some of the nonprofits, if we could look at that and we could dream big and we could look at these services are already in place, but if we utilized them and partnered with like TPC, Texas Panhandle Center, and did good mental health there, then we start looking at some of the solutions to decrease it without throwing more money at something that's not effective.
Well, I think if you look at, I'm just thinking out loud here what might cause the problem, but you mentioned your father who grew up in the Depression. Back then, you had people that they were homeless, but they called them hobos, you know, and they were just roaming around the country looking for work, and a lot of them didn't want to stay in any one place. But I think if you look at what causes it, mental health is an issue. That's one. But then the rest of it's government regulation, which is things like minimum wage that people think is so wonderful. It actually puts a lot of people out of work. They can't compete at the low end of the wage scale. And the government, people would hire these people if they could pay them what they were worth so they could gain skills and then make more money. But the government stops that. And then housing costs have risen due to regulations and not allowing the private sector to work, because the government's gone in through HUD and all this to give these huge developers these huge incentives and low interest to build these huge complexes of new buildings, but the cost is so high. And then they create another program that they have to qualify for to be able to live there. And pretty soon you have the government skewing the rental market, which has actually pushed the costs way up. Cities raise taxes, that pushes rents up. everything ends up coming down to the very lowest common denominator at the very low end. So all of us at the low end of the income scale pay it all.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses, corporations aren't going to pay the tax. That's going to be pushed through to whatever product.
Right.
And they don't understand that. They say, hey, Amazon doesn't pay any tax. They're paying every employee's taxes.
Right.
They're paying their property taxes. They're paying their income taxes, because if they weren't working for them, they wouldn't have the money to pay and support all that. But people can't see that. So they just become emotional and say, Amazon doesn't pay any tax. Yes, they do.
I think you bring up the topics on the government and stuff like that. I think we have to take Amarillo and really choose to kind of back some of the system and think outside the box here in Amarillo. I think Amazon is such a hot topic here, especially like us listening today. I think we can look at, yes, that there's been a lot of people who have noted about their working environment and stuff like that. But then I think that's being straightforward up front with them, going, hey, Amarillo, Texas is completely different. We have an expectation for how we want you to treat our employees. I'm like you. 500 employee jobs. And, I know some people have said, oh, it's only $15 an hour. Well, growing up off of Amarillo Boulevard, somebody has got way too far away from minimum wage that you don't realize. $15 an hour, that's a lot of people in Amarillo, more than what they make. And they would love that opportunity. 500 positions. And you're absolutely right. Those are people who will pay their property taxes. They'll pay their city taxes. And they will invest in our community.
Exactly. And not all the people that are going to work there are going to make that. But to me, we've gotten to the point where we politicize everything. I'm getting people mad at me because I'm interviewing people that might be Democrats. Mm-hmm. So what?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
We got to quit politicizing everything. I don't care. I have no idea what Jeff Bezos' politics are. I assume he's left wing because he has to be in order to probably do business. But I bet you if you sat him down one-on-one and you really found out what he said, he's probably pretty conservative. But it doesn't matter to me. It shouldn't matter. I don't care what every business owner's politics are. I don't know. If I go into a restaurant and it just doesn't make any difference, and we've got to get that out of our head, I think. It just doesn't matter.
I agree with you. One of the things that anybody who knows me will tell you, my personal Facebook page is made up of extremely diverse people, and I'm very proud of that. From priests to nuns to atheists to right wing, left wing. That's where all conversation has to happen. Mm-hmm. If I don't have diversity in my friendship group, then how can I have a true picture of what our world looks like? I'm very happy to be a conservative that has lots of LGBT friends. And, I was on an interview and somebody said, well, do you think they should have more rights? I don't think anybody in the LGBT group is asking for more rights. I think they're just asking for equal rights. And I think they're asking in our community, hey, they pay their taxes too. What do you want from your city? Just a voice. So, like for me, I'm proud that when my social group is Republicans, Democrats, it's non-voters, it's all kinds of different religions. That's our world. And if we can't model to children how to come together and how to listen, then what hope do we have for our future? Like, I can listen to somebody have a completely opposite view than me. The way I treat them is a reflection of me and who I am. If I'm disrespectful, and I want no part of any hate groups or even any people that are bashing the current office people. They're people that get paid $10 for a meeting. They're pretty much volunteering for a city. Good job. You've done a good job. Now, I just believe there's time for change. But even the people who are in office, I'm not going to join a group that is bashing them and making it personal. That's a reflection of that person. Right. I can tell you the whole mental health side of it, that is your need to be seen and heard when you're attacking those people. Agree and disagree with them professionally about their opinions or voting records, but don't make it personal.
Well, and I've had this conversation with some of those groups, and they want to know what I thought, so I told them. I don't think they liked it very well, but I said, look, y'all just go about it wrong.
Yeah.
I said, you can't go down to the city council meeting and lob fire bombs at the city council and then can't figure out why they don't listen to you.
Right.
I said, you have to treat them with respect. If you have a solution, pick up the phone and call your city council people, meet with them, explain why you think your idea is better and theirs is not as good,
right.
and give them that idea. Meet with them, the city manager, and say, here's how we could solve this problem. If you like it, you run with it. Mm-hmm. It's your idea. And let them do it. And don't worry about who gets the credit. If you truly want to solve problems, that's how you do it.
I agree with you. In fact, one of the city councils that my husband and I sat in on, there was a lady from North Heights, and she was determined to get a crossing walk with flashing lights put in there. And what she stated in the public forum, which I absolutely believe in, that people should be allowed to be heard. I like that it was a 2 or 3 minute. I thought it was enough time to address people's issues. But she said that she had been at every single one for like 2 years saying the same comment. Every time I go down North Heights to go to my church, I think of that lady, like, you got your way, honey. You worked really hard. You were committed. Like, your name should be on this sign right here that you were consistent, you showed up, and you voiced that concern. One of the problems that I heard a friend talk about euthanasia of a mother dog that was having puppies, and several animal rights people were very, very concerned, which they should have been. But when they called people at the city, no one returned their call, no one on the council. It doesn't matter if you don't value that topic or that issue. They're still a voting person, and somebody in the city should have picked up that phone call and returned that phone call and said, I hear you. I'm going to, if you ask me something, usually I have my notebook with me, I'm going to take it down, and if I give you my word, I'm going to look into it. You're going to get a response. Even if I don't know who to ask, that means I need to ask 5 more people. Who's the right person on this, and give this person an answer. Why? Because they deserve it.
Well, and mistakes happen. People do things that are stupid, for lack of a better word. That's just the way life is. But what you try to do is minimize that and keep it from happening again.
Hey, don't you think that even as a business owner, and me too, as a therapist, a mom, a wife, of whatever, I think we own our mistakes. And when we make mistakes, hey, bad deal. Bad deal. This was not what we should do. But I think if you don't own it and you try and sweep stuff under the rug, man,
that's
it
what
festers.
Creates the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what really creates the problem.
Yeah.
Or they try to start using race or religion, or they try to divide people, and that really irritates me, because I don't think anybody cares what color somebody is, what religion they are, what sex they are. Nobody cares. They care about, as Martin Luther King said, the content of their character. And when people try to divide people into groups, I'm like Ed Grenier said the other night at a presentation on the Constitution, I thought was really good. He said there's 2 types of people in this world: Americans and people that wish they were. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's how we need to look at things. I think it's great that people are different. You know, if we're all the same, it'd be a pretty boring world.
I do think that, and it's interesting. I remember the first time that my children used the word white privilege. I was like, that is crazy. I was raised in North Amarillo with so much adversity and so many obstacles and stuff. But having biracial children, my husband being Hispanic, I wish that was so that people looked at the content of your heart. And even actually being a woman running an office here, that I've had some He-Man women haters situations that I've just been like, you don't even know me. I mean, you don't even know that I've invested in our community for 25 years with children, or even watching my children go through stuff that they're all they're educated, they're good human beings. They treat people like the values that I was raised with. You treat people like you want to be treated. And I've watched them be treated differently because of their skin color. So I think we have to be very mindful that Amarillo, Texas, and I think we do it well. I do. I think we're maybe a small town, but I think we really treat people well. Now that's not all of us. And that's not all people have your heart, that it's you're quoting Martin Luther King, or that I can love people based on their diversity. But there's still some prejudice. There's still some biases that that maybe even get kept in the closet, but every now and then you get that chance or that opportunity that doesn't get you in the door.
Well, it may, yeah, there could be some, but I don't think it's systemic.
I don't think it's an interesting word. Let me use something different. I think that there's glass ceilings everywhere, and it actually coming from poverty. You said you was a small town farm kid? Man, I think you was blessed. I think you were. I have lots of friends over in Nazareth, Groom, Dalhart. I think there's a sense of y'all were all one group. Y'all were people.
Yeah.
Nazareth people. It doesn't matter. Y'all were all one people. But like growing up in North Amarillo, there were glass ceilings. That the over there are y'all people, or it just is a harder path or way to get in the door. Now I'm standing here, so
Yeah, but you got to have that challenge to overcome that other people didn't get.
I look every
That's
time
the
I
way I
go
look
back
at
to
it.
that block. I think about my parents raised me with a driving force, but not everybody survives those neighborhoods. So I think there's a lot in. I think we're more of a class system than about a race system. I think that coming out of poverty is hard, and I think it takes a lot of hands up to go, hey, let me invite you to this meeting. Here, let me introduce you to this person. I think that means we all have to be intentional. That who do you help back from your community, or who do I help start a business, or who do I help? I know for my private practice, there's probably 9 therapists here in town or more that I've intentionally helped get them started. I don't need to be competitive with them. I'm called to open doors for them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think what we want to do is all we can do as society, and that's why I tend to be more free market. I think we're more socialist now and have been for a long time, which is creating more and more problems. But in a true capitalist society, what you want everybody to have the same opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's up to that individual to take advantage of it. And you can't force people to take advantage of opportunity. You just can't do it. Some people, when they see opportunity, they take it and run with it. And other people don't.
But I think those doors, I think there's so many opportunities that it's so interesting being at this stage of life, being close to 55 and seeing this path and where me and my husband have headed, and even his stories of being a Hispanic person, that there's doors that are just a little bit easier open through memberships, through club opportunities, through even faith organizations, that I think there's a lot of people running against the wind. And I think that that's where I think Amarillo is different, that people work hard and you get what you put into life. But I think we have to be mindful how many doors are shut to people, and make sure, back to what you said, that if you put in the same amount of effort that and it's not about being fair.
No.
I think that's the craziest term. Everybody gets what they need. Yeah, there's no such thing. You get what you need, and sometimes you get breaks or lucks or whatever, but we don't want systems to be shut off where it intentionally keeps people from running their race. In this competition, which I feel like with Howard and the other people, that I'm not even focused on them. So actually I haven't watched their interviews, because God asked me to run just my little race. And everything so far in this life, from coming from North Spring Street, is to run my own race and be respectful in the way that I do stuff.
So what, is there any other things you'd like to tell the voters about you before we wrap it up? And also, how do you have a website?
I do. I have a Facebook page that's Sharyn Delgado, candidate for place 4. And then I have a SharynDelgado.com. I'm pretty frugal. I'm just, it's a small campaign. I want to get my name out there. I'm open for people calling me, asking me questions, email me a question. I may not know the answer, but I'll find the answer. I'm learning a whole lot about our city government. I actually believe in little people. I think that the small person actually has a voice, and that I think if we all come together, we can create change. When you said that earlier about being the change, I really do think one person can change the world. If I'm a builder of people, and that's what I'm called to be, that in my little neighborhood, my community, and the people that I'm near, I'm called to be a builder of people.
Very good. All right. Well, I sure appreciate you coming by, Sharyn. And it's Sharyn Delgado, Place 4. And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you.